You ever been in a place where you're doing everything right and still everything feels wrong? You're showing up, you're praying, you're trying to stay faithful, but you're tired. Tired in your mind, tired in your body, tired in your soul. Let me tell you something, God sees that. You think he doesn't see the tears you cry on your way to work? You think he's unaware of the weight you carry that nobody else can see? Listen, God sees your struggle. He knows you're tired, but here's the good news, it doesn't mean you're done. Tired doesn't mean you're weak. Tired doesn't mean you're broken beyond repair. It means you've been pushing, fighting, walking through storms, and you're still here. That tells me something about you. It tells me there's more strength in you than you realize. And it tells me that God's not finished with you yet. Because God doesn't waste pain. He doesn't overlook perseverance. He doesn't ignore prayers whispered through exhausted lips. He's using it. He's using that pressure to build power. He's using that struggle to set you up for strength. He's using your tiredness to remind you you were never meant to carry this alone. See, grace isn't just a church word. Grace is your second wind. When your energy runs out, grace kicks in. When your faith wavers, grace holds you steady. When you don't know what's next, grace walks with you anyway. And maybe the reason the enemy is hitting you so hard is because he sees what's on the other side of your obedience. So I came to remind you, don't give up in the struggle. Don't quit in the exhaustion. Don't mistake being tired for being finished. You're not finished, you're being forged. You're not falling apart, you're falling into place. God sees your struggle. He knows you're tired. And he's saying today, I've got you. Keep going. I'm not done yet. Have you ever felt invisible in your pain? Like you were crying on the inside but smiling on the outside because that's what was expected of you. Maybe you're the strong one in your family, the dependable one, the one who holds it all together. But who holds you? You show up, you serve, you stay faithful, and still you wonder, does anybody see what I'm carrying? Let me tell you something that will shift your perspective. God sees what no one else can. He doesn't just see the surface, he sees the sacrifice. He sees the battles you're fighting in silence, the nights you lie awake wondering if things will ever change. The world may not notice, but God is paying attention to every detail of your struggle. Sometimes you think your pain is too small for God. Like you should just be grateful or push through. So you keep quiet. You smile in public and break in private, but God says, I see you. He says, I know exactly what you're going through. I've counted every tear and not one has been wasted. And maybe the reason you're still standing, even though you feel like you should have fallen by now, is because God has been holding you in ways you didn't even recognize. Every time you thought you were alone, you weren't. Every time you felt unseen, you were known by name. There is healing in being seen. There is comfort in knowing that you are not forgotten by God. The enemy wants you to believe your struggle is pointless, that no one cares, that your effort is in vain. But the devil is a liar. Because if God saw Hagar crying in the desert, if he saw Elijah under the broom tree, if he saw Jesus in Gethsemane, then he sees you right now. He sees you trying to raise that child. He sees you fighting that addiction. He sees you believing in a breakthrough even when everything around you says it's impossible. God is not distant. He is near to the brokenhearted. So what do you do when it feels like no one understands? You remind yourself that your Creator sees what your critics never will. You stop chasing validation from people and rest in the truth that you're already approved by God. He sees the seed before it sprouts. He sees the value while others only see the mess. And if he sees you, truly sees you, then you can walk with confidence, even in the dark. Because when the God of heaven says, I've got my eye on you, that means he's also got your future in his hand. And what he sees, he sustains. You're tired. Not just physically soul tired. You're waking up every day trying to find strength for another round, another conversation, another challenger. You feel like you've been in survival mode for so long that you've forgotten what rest feels like. But let me speak something into your tired spirit today. Tired doesn't mean defeated. Being worn out doesn't mean you're weak. It means you've been fighting. And that fight is proof that you're not finished. Because defeat isn't when you're exhausted. Defeat is when you stop believing there's a reason to keep going. But the fact that you're still showing up, still choosing faith, still pressing forward when everything in you wants to give up, that is strength. That is endurance. That is the evidence that God's still breathing purpose into your pain. The enemy wants you to believe that being tired is a sign you're failing, that if you really trusted God, you wouldn't feel this drain. But that's a lie. Because even Jesus got tired. Even he had to steal away to lonely places and rest. Being tired is not a weakness. It's a human reality. And the beautiful truth is this: God doesn't despise your exhaustion. He meets you in it. He doesn't wait until you've got it all together to show up with his power. In fact, his strength is made perfect in your weakness. So maybe this weariness isn't the end. Maybe it's the setup. Maybe it's the moment where you finally stop trying to carry everything in your own strength and let God carry you. You've been running so hard trying to be everything for everyone that you've forgotten it's okay to sit down and breathe. Not quit, just breathe. Because there's a difference between quitting and resting. And maybe God brought you here to remind you rest is not retreat, it's recovery. You're not lazy, you're not lacking faith, you're just human. And God didn't design you to grind your way through life on intellect. He designed you to depend on him. So when you're tired, don't let shame in, let grace in. Let peace in. Let the voice of God speak louder than the voice of your fatigue. Because even in your tired state, you're still chosen, still called, still equipped, and still victorious. Look at you. You've been through so much and you're still standing. You may be limping, but you're still moving. You may be discouraged, but you're still believing. That's not weakness, that's warrior status. That's what it means to walk by faith and not by sight. You're not defeated, you're in development. You're in the middle of a process that God is using to grow you, stretch you, and prepare you for what's next. What have confused the pressure of the process with the end of your story? You see, is the one that you're tired doesn't cancel your destiny. In fact, you're tired may just be the confirmation that you're on the right path. Because the enemy doesn't fight people who aren't a threat. You're tired, yes, but you are not done. And you are definitely not defeated. But pressure has a way of making you question everything. You start asking, why is this happening to me? Why now? Why this? And the enemy loves to step into that space with lies. He'll tell you the pressure means you're out of alignment, that you must have made a wrong turn. But here's the truth. There is purpose in the pressure. Pressure isn't always punishment. Sometimes it's preparation. When God wants to build your strength, he doesn't send comfort, he sends resistance. Because resistance builds resilience. Just like muscles don't grow without tension, your spirit won't grow without trials. So when you feel that weight pressing on you, don't rush to escape it. Ask God, what are you producing in me through this? Because pressure isn't the end, it's the beginning of something powerful. There's a reason diamonds don't form in soft spaces. Diamonds come from pressure. So do callings. So do breakthroughs. So do testimonies that shake the gates of hell. You're not being crushed for no reason. You're being called out of comfort into your next level. The very thing you thought would break you may be the thing God uses to bless you. But you've got to change your perspective. You've got to stop praying for the pressure to disappear and start praying for the grace to grow through it. See, pressure reveals what's in you. It pushes out the insecurity. It squeezes out the fear. It exposes where you've been relying on your own strength and reminds you to lean on God. And every time you survive the pressure, you come out with power. I think about a seed. It doesn't become a tree until it's buried, pressed down, and forced to break open. That pressure is part of the process. And what if the pressure in your life right now is not there to bury you, but to birth something in you? What if the weight you're carrying is the exact thing God is using to produce the next chapter of your purpose? See, we pray for power, but we don't always like the process that leads to it. But God says if you want to be anointed, you've got to go through the crushing. Because there's oil in the pressure, there's breakthrough in the burden, there's maturity in the middle of the mess. Don't despise it, don't curse it. Let it develop you. So let the pressure do its work. Let it stretch you, shape you, and show you what's really inside you. Because pressure doesn't mean God has left you, it means He's working on you. He's elevating you, promoting you, getting you ready for the thing you prayed for. And I know it hurts, but hurt is not the absence of purpose. In fact, the pressure is a signal that something is about to happen. So don't give up in the pressing. You don't walk away in the wait. God is using this pressure to release something in you that comfort never could. You are being forged in the fire. And on the other side of this pressure, there's power. Waiting is one of the hardest parts of faith. It's easy to trust God when things are moving, when prayers are being answered and doors are opening. But what about the moments when nothing's happening? When you've prayed, believed, obeyed, and all you hear is silence. That silence can be loud. That stillness can feel like abandonment. But let me speak to your spirit today. God is not ignoring you. He's preparing something for you and something in you. Just because you don't see movement doesn't mean God isn't moving. Waiting is not wasted when God is in it. In fact, God often does His deepest work in the waiting, not in the arrival. You're in the middle of something right now, and it may feel like a delay. But to God, it's divine timing. See, we want progress we can see. We want updates, confirmations, visible results. But God works differently. He operates behind the curtain. And while you're asking, where's God in all this? He's already on the job shifting pieces you can't even see. He's not just preparing the blessing, He's preparing you to receive it. Because if He gave it to you too soon, it could crush you instead of bless you. So don't mistake God's silence for His absence. He's not ignoring you. He's constructing a future that's stronger, deeper, and more complete than anything you could have asked for. And while you're waiting, He's weaving things together, aligning people, opportunities, even obstacles to work in your favor. God doesn't show up late. He shows up ready. Waiting exposes the gap between what you believe and what you see. That gap is where faith grows. That's where trust is tested and endurance is forged. Think of Joseph in the prison, David in the pasture, Moses in the wilderness. They all had to wait, and not just for days, but for years. And yet, in every one of those stories, God was working even when it looked like nothing was happening. He was positioning them, stretching them, developing character that success could not shortcut. So don't despise your waiting season. It's not punishment, it's preparation. God is training you in the shadows for what He's about to reveal in the light. And when it comes, it will make sense. Not just the blessing, but why the delay was necessary. So if you're tired of waiting, let me remind you, God is worth the wait. His plan is still intact. His timing is still perfect. And His purpose for you hasn't changed just because the calendar did. You may not feel progress, but God is planting something deeper, something that can't be shaken. And in this waiting season, He's not asking you to figure it all out. He's just asking you to stay faithful, to trust that what feels like a pause is actually part of the process. So lift your head, strengthen your spirit, your strength, and declare this: I may be waiting, but I'm not wasting this season. God is working, and I will see it in His time. Because the same God who gave the promise is the same God who's preparing the fulfillment even when it's hidden. He works in the waiting. There are days when you don't feel strong at all. Days when getting out of bed takes more faith than walking on water. When praying feels more like surviving than believing. And everything in your life is screaming, you can't do this. But here's what I came to tell you. You're stronger than you feel. Feelings are real, but they're not always true. You may not feel powerful, but that doesn't mean you're not. You may not feel courageous, but that doesn't mean you're called to quit. Sometimes the strength you're looking for isn't found in your feelings, it's found in your faith. God didn't call you to walk by feelings, He called you to walk by faith. So when your emotions are exhausted, you don't need to feel strong, you just need to remember who your strength comes from. See, we often measure our strength by how easy life feels. If it's flowing, we think we're strong. If it's hard, we think we're failing. But real strength isn't proven by how light the load is. Real strength shows up when you keep walking under the weight. And here's the beautiful part. God doesn't ask you to manufacture strength. He just asks you to trust Him to supply it. Isaiah 40:29 says, He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. That means the very moment you feel least capable is the exact moment God is most available. You think your struggle disqualifies you, but it actually proves you're in the game. Weakness isn't a curse, it's an invitation for God to move in a way you could never pull off on your own. And can we talk about how strength doesn't always look like we expect? Strength isn't always shouting or charging ahead. Sometimes it's showing up again. Sometimes it's crying but still believing. It's admitting you don't have it all together and yet refusing to walk away. It's standing in the middle of chaos and declaring, I still trust God. That kind of strength isn't flashy. It's quiet. It's internal, but it's unshakable. And maybe the reason you haven't broken under the weight you've been carrying is because you're stronger than you think. You didn't get here by accident. You've been carried by grace, grown through pain, and sustained by a power you can't even explain. That's not weakness. That's strength on display. So the next time you think, I can't do this, remind yourself you already are. You're already surviving what tried to destroy you. You're already walking through what you once thought would bury you. And here's the best part. You're not doing it alone. God is your strength. And when your strength runs out, His kicks in. He's not waiting for you to be fearless. He's just asking you to be faithful. Not to feel like a warrior, but to walk like one. Because you can't always trust your feelings, but you can always trust God's word. And He says you are more than a conqueror. So today, stand tall in the middle of your mess. Not because you feel strong, but because you are stronger than you feel. You ever reach a point where you've got nothing left? No more strength, no more motivation, no more push. You've prayed all the prayers, fought all the battles, wiped the tears off your own face, and now you're just done. That's the moment where you find out something powerful. Grace is your second win. Grace shows up when your strength runs out. Grace doesn't wait for you to have it all together and finds you flat on your face and lifts you up again. And I don't know who this is for, but you've been trying to power through something in your own strength. And it's exhausting in that. You were never meant to carry this weight alone. That's why God gave you grace. Not just to save you, but to sustain you. When you're weak, grace says, I've got you. See, your strength is limited, but grace is not. Your willpower has a finish line, but grace runs past it. Grace takes over when your natural runs out. That's what makes it supernatural. Paul said, when I am weak, then I am strong, because he knew the secret wasn't in pushing harder, it was in surrendering faster. And that might be the shift you need today. Not more hustle, not more effort, but more surrender. When you give up trying to be your own source and let grace carry you, that's when God does His best work. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for dependency. And the very moment you say, God, I can't, grace replies, I know that's why I'm here. You thought hitting your limit was a failure, but it might actually be your freedom. Because when you hit your wall, that's where grace builds a door. When you've got nothing left, that's when grace breathes fresh life into your lungs. It's your second win, not because you got stronger, but because God stepped in. And this isn't hype, this is help. Grace shows up with strength you didn't earn, peace you can't explain, and courage you never thought you had. That's why you're still standing. That's why the enemy couldn't take you out. He underestimated the power of God's grace in your life. And maybe what you thought was your breaking point is actually your breaking through. Not because you kept going, but because grace kept carrying you. So don't be ashamed if you're out of strength. That's not the end. It's the beginning of something greater. Grace isn't just your safety net, it's your launch pad. It lifts you when life has knocked you down. It speaks to your soul when your mind is full of doubt. And when you don't know how to take the next step, grace says, just lean on me. So take a breath. You don't have to be enough because grace is. God's not asking you to finish this in your own power. He's already supplied what you need. And the next chapter of your story won't be written by effort, it'll be written by grace. Grace that strengthens, grace that sustains, grace that gives you your second wind right when you need it most. Let's be honest, struggle doesn't feel strategic when you're in the middle of it. It feels like failure, like disappointment, like being stuck while everyone else is moving forward. But what if I told you that what you're calling a setback is really a setup? That the pain you're going through isn't pointless, it's part of God's plan. Because God doesn't waste pain. He doesn't author confusion, but He knows how to use it. That struggle you're facing, the one that's stretching your patience, your faith, your strength, God is using it to shape you for something greater. It may feel like you're losing ground, but in the unseen realm, God is building a foundation. The pressure isn't proof that God has left you. It's proof that He's getting ready to launch something through you. Sometimes struggle is the only thing strong enough to push you into your purpose. Comfort doesn't build courage, conflict does, and God will allow a struggle not to punish you, but to position you, to get you out of what's familiar and into what's next. Think about it. Joseph had to be thrown in a pit before he could get to the palace. David had to face Goliath before he could wear a crown. Jesus had to go through the cross before he could walk out of the grave. The struggle wasn't a detour. It was the delivery system for destiny. What looked like trouble was actually transition. And what you thought was working against you was actually working in you, building something unshakable, something eternal, something divine. You might not see it now, but God is strategic in ways we'll never fully understand. He knows how to turn struggle into strategy. You thought that heartbreak was going to destroy you, but God used it to deepen your faith. You thought that closed door was the end, but it was God's way of redirecting you to something better. That layoff, that diagnosis, that betrayal, it hurt, yes, but it also shifted your perspective, taught you who to trust, and uncovered strength you didn't even know you had. That's strategy. That's sovereignty. That's what happens when God steps into the middle of your mess and turns it into a miracle. So don't curse your struggle. Ask God to show you what it's setting you up for. This might be the very season where God is preparing you the most, not in spite of the struggle, but through it. And here's the truth. If you didn't struggle, you wouldn't stretch. If you didn't wrestle, you wouldn't grow. So even if it feels like the enemy is winning, hold on, God's not finished. The same God who allowed the storm has already planned the rescue. And the outcome isn't in question. Victory is already woven into the story. So lift your head. You're not stuck, you're being set up. God is aligning connections, opening doors, shifting atmospheres. And one day you'll look back and realize that thing that almost broke you actually built you. What you called a struggle, God was calling strategy all along. You may be tired, you may be stretched, you may be waiting, but you're not alone and you're not done. God sees your struggle and He's not standing by, He's stepping in. What feels like pressure is producing purpose. What feels like weakness is being met with grace. What feels like silence is full of strategy. This is not the end, this is the setup. You're stronger than you feel, and even in the waiting, God is working. His promises don't expire just because you're exhausted. And the beauty of grace is this: when your strength runs out, God's strength starts to show off. So don't quit in the valley. Don't let your feelings cancel your faith. You are being refined, not rejected. And the victory God promised, it's already yours. Walk forward like it's done, because in heaven it already is.